But I think that it's not only training people, but making them understand why they have to comply and what that means. We found that a lot of our users, they don't understand why they have to do these tests and maintain controls, and they don't have the knowledge transferred to them to realize the importance of that and why we do it.
We're working with an organization right now that's a global organization, and what we're finding is that, as Andrea said, that the cultural differences between the various regions are pretty significant.
Yes.
As you look across the Asia world, the Latin American world, the European world, Middle Eastern world, et cetera, there are very, very different approaches to this notion of compliance and information and everything else that we're talking about. And what we do is we try to say, what are the outcomes that people need to drive towards? What does good look like at the end of the day? And then we try to figure out what the guardrails are that people need to operate within in their different cultural environments. Because if you look at different regions, there are some pretty significant differences in how work should be done. But all that work should still be done towards the same end and the same definition of good. And so establishing and understanding both of those criteria are pretty important.
The technology that we've all brought to the market this past year is an uncoincidentally named U-Align. So it's what ANCILE does as far as our current branding is a lowercase u, but it does pretty much what Greg has said and what Andrea has needed, is it really focuses on providing information on a real-time basis and push it through to be able to support the context of what we're doing here. And the reason I sort of asked Greg the question too about who's that stakeholder, who's the you, and it really does come down to the business leader to push information through.
This whole notion of working with business leadership first to understand what it is that they're trying to achieve. What's the reason for compliance? Why is that an issue? Is non-compliance a problem in terms of consequence of error, in terms of business results, and so forth? And so the first thing we want to do is understand from stakeholders what they want to achieve. And then what we do is we go out to the field where folks are working in everyday situations and try to define what is good. What is it that they're doing that works well? What are those best practices? What are the outcomes, the mental models that people use that enable them to achieve those things that the stakeholders want? And then what we do is we look at how do we equip everybody else in the workforce to match that star performance, that star level of performance that the good folks are already doing. And often that takes the form of information dissemination, of technology and tools, process changes if appropriate, lack of skill and knowledge, could be a whole range of things. But what we start off with, again, is business leadership. What are you trying to achieve? The star performers are the best in class. What are they currently doing? How are they thinking about it? And how are they doing it? And then how do we equip everybody else to match that star performance?
What's the difference between your solution, you mentioned U-Align earlier, and other technologies that are out there, SharePoint, email, social media, things like that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I get that a lot. I think the biggest difference is, like Andrea was saying too, the validation, the T, if you will. In other words, it's one thing to share information. It's another thing to push information, track its consumption, and also its comprehension to go to the place where you can actually offer validation. So I think that's probably the biggest difference. So whether we're sort of talking about differentiation from a social media platform where people are collaborating about a topic, it's still voluntary for the most part, whether people go there or not, and actually share and collaborate. But I think one of the differences is with something like U-Align, it actually supports the contextual push, like Greg said, of information within a channel or a campaign, but it also is able to immediately track who's consumed and who's comprehended, so that it's a big so that you can take action from it from there. And if we're differentiating from, say, like a learning management system where you've got training and certification out there, that's good, but it's typically very static, not real-time, and not focused on today's information and operations. So it's also that real-time aspect that is different. I'd say that's probably the biggest difference area.